You are listening to Lab Listens.
Hi, I'm Juliette. Welcome back to Lab Listens. This is Season 2, Episode 3.
Hi, I'm Inka, and in this episode we're going to be talking a little bit about body image and how social media can create insecurities, especially for young people.
Yeah, that, like Inka said, that's what we're going to be talking about. And today we have a guest with us, so if you want, please introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Mr. Morrison, and as a teacher of 13 years and more recently a father, it's particularly something that I'm interested in, the topic of, young people having healthy self-esteem. And this is my first time on the podcast, so I apologise for a lack of fluency or inarticulacy, but I appreciate your support, guys, so thanks for having me.
That's all right. Thank you for introducing yourself. So, a quick question. How can social media affect the way people see themselves? I'm going to start, I think. I think social media can affect the way you see your body because people compare their looks to people that are like on the internet, that like are influencers. They had plastic surgery or they're like really good at photoshopping. And I think photoshopping would also be like a very big, like
topic.
A bold topic of this episode. They compare themselves and they don't even know that they ever had plastic surgery or like they edit their photos.
Yeah, even wearing makeup.
Yeah. It mostly affects the way you see your body because if you're watching people that have like quote unquote have a perfect body, you'll feel pressured into changing the way you look, and you shouldn't do that because you're you. And then like that's the whole point of social media is sometimes to make people feel insecure about themselves.
Yeah, I think that social media, especially like TikTok or Instagram or apps where you can share photos and kind of like hashtag it or put a subtitle as whatever you want. So you can say that like, oh yeah, I'm just at the beach, when really you spent 5 hours photoshopping the photo and editing it, and you put on makeup specially, and it's like a whole thing. But people behind the screens don't know that. People who are seeing the photos, people that the audience don't know particularly that it spent you so long and that it's something that you specifically wanted to do to make yourself look good. But I think it's just really toxic, the way that people can share things where it's completely like filtered and it's completely something that no one else may not understand that, or like what it is.
So, I suppose from the perspective of a teacher, I'm interested in this kind of broad historical, I suppose, anomaly really, in the sense that there is, it seems, a kind of mental health crisis occurring in young people, particularly over the last decade. So there's an American social psychologist, I think he's probably the leading academic on this particular issue. His name is Jonathan Haidt. He's published a few books on the topic. He's well worth a read. But he often raises the point that if you look at young people's self-esteem, not their self-reported self-esteem, which has dropped, and there's an argument that if that had been the case, that young people today are more in touch with their feelings, or certainly feel more comfortable articulating their feelings, which is something that's healthy. But if you look at actual, hospital admissions for self-harm, or in the most extreme cases, suicide, what you see from the time that they start to gather data on this in the UK, in the US, in Canada, is a fairly steady trend. And then you see this massive increase in the early 2010s. You see an increase of up to 150% in some cases. And I don't know how else we begin to explain that unless, we're talking about social media. I think the reality is we define ourselves, especially when we're young, relative to our peers. And historically, if you think about the reality experienced by most young people, across the globe, that's been a pretty small group of people in the same area, in the same school of the same age. But social media, we're constantly exposed to people who present, as you remarked, as having some very envious lifestyles or being incredibly beautiful. And, even if we know, they're projecting partially a kind of constructed highlight reel of their lives, I think on some unconscious level that still gets through. And therefore, we're always comparing ourselves to individuals who appear to be in some way better. And I think that's probably extremely damaging over the long term for one's self-esteem.
Yeah, I agree. Like, with social media, there's always like an element of comparison. Like, whatever you see, like pictures of people or like posts, you're always going to be like, oh, I wish like I could look like that, or they look so amazing. And it's very unrealistic because, as Inka and Nat were saying earlier, there are so many things on social media, like filters, like people use loads of makeup and plastic surgery, that it's just like completely unrealistic. And in truth, no one really looks that perfect. But like people who might not be aware of that are like going into social media and becoming really damaged by it. And I think you've got to go in it with like a mindset that you are good enough and you don't look like all these like photoshopped people, but that's okay because no one really looks like that. It's just kind of a fake thing.
Yeah, I really agree with you, Juliette. So social media can really, really affect you. I've seen it myself firsthand. Some people, they just change themselves like almost instantly to try and fit in with people or to try and become something that they are not, which then leads to like really serious consequences. People can also be really, I guess, they can be really affected by it as well. In certain ways that people would go to some extent to like entirely change themselves, as I've already said, and sometimes even because they can't look like that, they'll try and commit suicide.
Yeah, like I totally agree. Like sometimes social media can have like the most like negative impact on somebody, which like fully like leads to like them like committing suicide, because that's not good. We don't want like that's kind of sounds weird, but we don't want people committing suicide because it's like really bad.
That's a problem.
Yeah, it's not good.
Honestly,
Yeah.
I was really shocked by the statistics that Mr. Morrison was reading, because I knew that it was really bad and I knew that it was getting worse, and I definitely that social media had an effect on this, but I didn't know it was that high.
Yeah.
So I think that's really, really damaging, and it's definitely something that we should try to improve, and that should be something that stops being so toxic.
And I think that some of the reporting around it, and why you might have been surprised by the statistic, is sometimes social media, in newspaper articles, tends to get conflated with digital media. So the argument has been, from the other side that, in fact, social media, there's a small correlation between kind of social media and reduced self-esteem of young people in particular, particularly girls, out of interest. But in fact, what the literature shows is there's a very small correlation between digital media and reduced self-esteem. So between, Netflix, video games, YouTube, and social media. But when you just isolate social media, there's a much larger correlation. And it's really quite troubling. And I think that the interesting thing, in part for myself, has been, and I've talked about this in assembly, so you may have heard me labour this point previously, but it's not just, I think, the fact that we see filtered projections of other people's appearances, but also filtered projections of their lives. So we see people at their happiest, at their most sociable. And because that's all we see, I suppose we assume that, again, not necessarily consciously, that's the totality of others' lives. And thus that our lives should be that way. And as I've tried to make the point previously, perhaps unsuccessfully, all the sages from all the ages make it very, very clear that life is hard. And even those of us who are extraordinarily privileged still have to contend with decay, death, heartbreak, grief, routine, drudgery, fatigue, dissatisfaction. If we accept that life is a challenge, and very, very difficult at times, paradoxically it can become easier. But, because struggle is something normalised, it's not something we need to feel the need to complain about, but a challenge with which to contend. I'm talking about daily struggles, not, significant trauma or anything like that. But I think a lot of young people, therefore, not only in part because of social media, have to contend with, life's hardships, but also the shame that accompanies the false belief constructed by social media that one should feel happy, and that if they don't, there's something wrong with them. I don't know if anyone feels or has felt.
I can completely relate. I feel like, because I spend a lot of my time on Pinterest, to be honest. Like, I'll just be like scrolling through pictures, and I don't know, I really like looking at like room design, and I think that's really great. I think that's really cool, like, because I get a lot of inspiration from that. But then you also see like all sorts of different like photos where you're like, oh, I wish, like, I don't know, I feel like room design is kind of a bad example. But like, oh, I wish my room was like that. Or if you see like a hairstyle, like, oh, I wish my hair was like that.
It's like comparing yourself.
I think that even with stuff that isn't necessarily about body, which is kind of straying away from the topic of the podcast, but I think that definitely comparing yourself can be a big issue, both like with your body, but also with generally your life, which I think is really...
Like I agree. Like sometimes, because I have like Instagram and TikTok, you can really tell when someone's trying to be someone else.
Yeah.
Like some people like do plastic surgery maybe to fix their little like lump on their nose, or maybe just put in like lip filler. But some people go as far as like tightening their waist so much that it looks really abnormal, or like filling in their cheekbones just to look like a Barbie doll, but it just looks really unrealistic. And then the person...
It's sad, to be honest. Like, not in a rude way, but I think that it's really sad that people have to go to those lengths because they feel so pressured by social media and society.
And then after, they're like, some of them, but a lot of them, but not all of them, they say, oh my god, I've made such a mistake, like this is not like my usual self, I think I went a bit too far. And then they try to get rid of like everything they can, but like if you like tighten your waist by plastic surgery, you can't really put your waist back together. You can't like, you could take lip filler out your lips, or like
eventually it will like wear
or
away
like
a little bit.
or like dissolve.
There's
Or
not
like
really any going back.
Like it's a choice.
plastic surgery.
It's money
like,
as well.
Yeah, it's like a lot of money. But yeah, who else has anything to say about like the whole topic?
I was just gonna add in about how like now we have so many people, like celebrities and people we look up to and really admire, and if they, do something like change their hair or something, it will become like a trend, and trends can travel so quickly because of how like connected we are, which is a great thing because it means that you can like connect with your family, and you can like, I'm saying connected a lot, but you can be connected with like anyone around the world. But it also has like negative impacts, like trends travel so quickly, and then everyone sort of feels very pressured to like jump on that trend, and if they're not doing it, then they're like different and they're weird. And also adding on to what Mr. Morrison was saying a minute ago, if like people post the best of their lives on social media, and if you are actually really having a good time, you're not going to stop and take your phone out and take a picture and post it on. So you've got to think, when you see all these like amazing happy photos, like, are they actually having that great of a time, or are they just surrounded by like makeup artists and stylists, and
maybe like in just a photography room, like it's all like green screen or something,
and doing like 1,000 takes to try and get the right picture? Like, if you're actually having a really good time, then you're probably not going to take a picture because you're too busy having a good time.
Unless you're like, oh, let's just take a group photo, or like maybe even keep it to yourself. But like adding on
for memories, to keep the memories.
But then, like, in group photos, not everyone looks perfect. Like, some people might
like blink.
Someone like blinked, or
exactly. It's
got,
never
like, a weird angle, or
right
something.
to get like the perfect quote unquote like moment.
But those pictures are still like
something that you treasure. Obviously.
they're more special.
But honestly, I think that it's sometimes too critical to blame like individuals for wanting to change how they look, because it's the society that we grew up in, it's the beauty standards, it's how I remember I was in Poland, because my mum's from Poland, and I was recently there, and I saw like on a massive billboard an advert for like some company where they would like tighten your waist and like take out like fat from your stomach, but it was like a surgery. But it was shown there, and it was showing how like jean sizes, I think that was the example, and it was showing how like, I don't know, how your waist could just get tighter and your stomach. And I think that especially like if you're young, if you're a teenager, or even if you're a child, kind of builds up that like this is what I meant to look like. I mean, it's being shown on adverts, being shown on social media, it's being shown on pictures, it's shown everywhere, and everyone else is also striving for that same thing. So it becomes like a built-up idea, even like subconsciously, that that's how you have to look, or that's like what you want to achieve, that's your goal.
Yeah,
I
like
think that's really toxic.
yeah, well, like what Inka said, like about taking like the fat like adverts. Like when I was in Poland, because I go there for like vacation, when I go into the road to my house, like it's like a highway, like a freeway, but there's a huge billboard. I don't know if they ever changed that billboard. It's been on there for years.
Yeah, 'cause a lot of them are paper, I think.
Yeah,
So.
for like a years that I can remember. It was a woman being in like a doctor's office, like a plastic surgeon's office, and them like taking like a picture of like them cut like having like the scalpel.
Like actually.
No, not actually, but it's
Yeah.
like a picture of like let's say the body is like on there, and then they
Yeah.
just touch the skin just for like
Yeah,
the
yeah.
picture. But how many times I've been past that is just absolutely mental. Like I've seen
It's
many
really horrible how like
yeah, because
you
then
could
it
be
just
a
puts
young
that image
child.
into your head.
It's,
It
like,
puts an image.
pressurising
Yeah,
Yeah,
young
like you
people.
get, I have vivid memories of being like 6 or 7 years old and seeing those billboards, and luckily I never really wanted that, and that's kind of because I was scared of knives, and kind of still am, of like injections and stuff
surgery.
that make it jumpy. But I think that it was definitely something that was kind of like in the back of my mind, as something that, like, even if I didn't want to do surgery for it, it was still something that yeah.
This has like always been happening though, like for a really, really long time. People would find the so-called perfect woman or the perfect person, and they would literally print them everywhere and show that everyone has to look like this person, or they're not perfect, or they're not good enough for anything.
Yeah, I think it's absolutely true that, you know, as long as we've existed in a kind of capitalist consumerist society, one of the ways that advertisers have sought to make profit is by targeting people's insecurities. So it's profitable for us all to have low self-esteem, in the sense that, okay, well maybe I'll feel better if I go out and buy that. But I think one of the more interesting things that I found actually researching for this podcast that I wasn't previously aware, and I probably should have been, is that we, those of us who engage in social media, we're not the customers, we're the product. And so these big companies are paying Instagram, they're paying TikTok, they're paying, I think previously it was called Tumblr, for our data, such that they can target our insecurities most effectively. And I think that's really damaging, because you could walk past a billboard which has a picture of a beautiful individual on it, and you can recognize that individual is attractive, and you might want to feel more attractive. But to constantly be scrolling and seeing, content that is specifically designed to target your most, acute vulnerabilities, I think there's something quite dark and dystopian about that particularly.
Yeah. And then I've also heard that your phone kind of like it's like a theory.
With all your data.
Yeah, that your phone can like hear you, because like whenever you're like scrolling through something, and then let's say your mum comes in, or like your friend, you talk about like a subject, and then next thing you open up your phone to like any like social media, like TikTok or like anything, and then you see like videos or images of that like subject constantly. So let's say you're talking about like a huge insecurity of yourself, it might show like, and then you end the conversation, you go onto your phone, and then you scroll, and then you see like ways to like get fit, or like ways to burn your stomach fat, or ways like tips on how to do it, just to either make yourself insecure, or because like technology is like listening to you and like wanting them to target you into doing it. But yeah.
Yeah, and like Nat was saying, there's certain algorithms on your phone. I know, especially on TikTok. Sorry. Especially on TikTok, for sure, there's like algorithms. So if you like a video of maybe someone with really clear skin, then the algorithm will remember that and bring up more videos of people with really clear, smooth skin. And then you'll start thinking that it's normal to have really clear skin and being like, why don't I have
Technology
clear
these
skin?
days.
Yeah, like it's too smart.
Yeah.
I think I want to bring like one more thing up before we start to wrap up, but I think that kind of from a completely different perspective, I think that it is slightly getting better than from the past few years. I feel like people are finally drawing attention to the fact that social media can be toxic, and now there are a lot more like self-care and like wellness and mental health influencers out there who are actually trying to draw attention to this and kind of say the opposite and say that like, oh no, and they might like zoom in on like a pimple that they have or something and show that it is completely normal. So I think that is definitely changing slightly, but I think there's kind of like two sides of social media.
I suppose I just wanted to touch on a point that I think Inka made earlier, where she talked about connection and the fact that was really positive, and I do think it's important to have a nuanced discussion and to recognise the benefits that can be accrued from social media. But I actually think that from the perspective of an older person, maybe I really feel that we have dropped the ball and really kind of let your generation down, in the sense that I just don't think people of your age should be expected to be equipped to manage what is in some cases, I think, and in some ways, an addiction, in the sense that we have some of the smartest people in the world working to make, those pages in your Instagram feed as addictive as possible. And I think most things that we are aware of as being addictive have an age restriction, because we know that adolescents can't manage their emotions on average as well as adults. And that's not a criticism, it's a physiological fact. So your prefrontal cortex is not fully developed until you're 25. You think about cigarettes, they're banned to young people because they're bad for your health. Alcohol is the same. Now, I know social media has an age restriction, but, does anyone ever get followed up on that? I don't know.
No.
But the one question I actually wanted to ask you guys, if I may, and I'm conscious of time,
of course.
is that, again, when I was doing some research around this, I was particularly interested in, firstly, the literature which suggests how very damaging it is for young people of a particular generation, but why it also seems to be more damaging for teenage girls. And the most interesting point I've found on that, and I'd be interested in your pushback or whether you feel this resonates, is it seems to have something to do with the act of posting itself. And the idea that, for instance, I know at this school, and rightly I think, we ask you to put your phones away as you come through the gate. We ask you not to use your phone until you leave at the end of the school day. But the idea is that were you to post, let's say, a picture of yourself in the morning, then you'd be anxious all day thinking about, the likes you may have received, any comments you may have received, and that paints a very kind of generalised picture of someone quite self-indulgent. But actually, I think that, it's an interesting idea that some of that is the reason behind some of the worry that it causes.
Yeah, because I think, like, sorry to interrupt you, but I think most like teenage girls are insecure because they're on an app that a lot of adults are also on, and then the adults are like fully like they've done everything. They maybe have a job, they might do social media as a job, but us teenage girls, we see them adults, and then we see what they do, for example, like their skincare or how they look, or maybe they said, oh, like this was my natural skin, and then the adults are like painting like a reference to teenage girls saying this is what you should be looking like, because you're on the app, and then you're seeing them, the adults, so like they're coming up on your like your For You page, so you're seeing them and then you're like, wow, this is, if I start now, then I'll look like that when I'm older. But in reference, like in the backstory, they might have gotten plastic surgery, or they may have gone like, there's some skincare types things for, I don't even understand that. And yeah, they just do that, and then they're like, oh, I should be looking like this when I'm like 25 years old, even though you shouldn't be looking like that when you're 25 years old.
I think that it's more like specifically is with teenage girls a lot, because I mean we've got, I think, a way like broader amount of things. I think most like celebrities or like influencers that do like vlogs, skincare, makeup tends to be women, because I think that it's even historically like women used to be a lot about like looks and based on how you look and like all the like aesthetics and fashion of it. So I think that even though now obviously that's not the case, and it's definitely more like both genders or all genders depending on like your beliefs, that it's like very much everyone can do it now. I think that kind of a lot of women, and I think mainly women, are like posting videos, posting photos about that kind of thing. So I think that it specifically affects teenage girls. I think it's something that they're always comparing themselves to.
Yeah, I really agree with you. So the fact that most teenage girls, they see something on a social media app, and then they're like, oh yeah, I want to be like that. And then that also reflects in how they do in school as well, like especially in school. So like maybe they were like really, really good at a certain subject, and like to act quote unquote cool, they would put their grades down, and then they'll get more popularity, when actually that's just reflecting on the people who know how much insecurity they have inside, and that they're just trying to fit in, I guess.
Yeah, I think that's definitely a subject that we should talk about. We could even do maybe another season on it, or at least a few more episodes, because I think it's definitely something where people think that they should be cool, quote unquote, obviously, that like in school especially, where they're trying like I've seen people be rude to teachers, or be rude, or not do as well in lessons just to try and act like you're cool. Personally, I don't really see why, but I think that it's definitely something that
it's called technology. It's called social media. That's why we're doing this season.
Yeah, and also there's like a kind of tendency to push other people down to try and like make yourself climb higher.
Yeah.
Like a lot of people think, oh, if I like insult them, like what kind of shoes they're wearing, or I don't know what brand of makeup they use, or just anything like that, then it will make me feel more self-validated and also make me look cooler. But in reality,
it doesn't.
It doesn't.
It's just mean.
It's just mean. It's making more people. Oh my god, not again. It's making more people insecure, and like, it's because there's so much pressure and stress to fit in with the crowd, so you have someone to like eat lunch with, or friends that you can call friends, but in reality you just like, you don't want to be friends with the kind of people that are gonna put you down for not having the right brand.
Yeah, that kind of happened to me, because I was friends with like a bad group of people. They told me things, like not told me things, they said that I should do this, like pressuring me into doing this, because they're like, oh, like it's cool, like they once said like, oh, we don't want to do this subject, come bunk with us, and I didn't do it obviously, because I'm not that type of person to bunk, but they were just saying, oh, like come bunk with us, it'll be so much fun, even though we probably could have got caught in court doing that, and that would like get escalated.
Even more, it's about integrity. Like even if you don't get caught, it's still important to show up to that subject. It's still important to do the learning.
Yeah, and then they would like tell me, oh, like this is not what you're supposed to be doing. You're supposed to be doing this. And then when they would talk to me, they would change the subject a lot, and then like the subjects were sometimes like not targeted at me, but there was like things that I didn't like about myself, and then they'd make me feel isolated. And then that's from that point onward, I moved on to like Inka's friend group, to like Inka, Eliza, Juliette, and all my other friends out there. Shout out to them, thank you. But yeah, like you should, if people are pressuring you, like not even people, like people on social media, if anyone's pressuring you into like saying, oh, you should do this, you should do that, or like you should be looking like this, you should be looking like that, just don't listen to them. Listen to what you think is right for you, because that's the most important thing. But yeah, I think we've covered a lot in this episode.
We're actually really productive today.
Yeah, and again, thank you to Mr. Morrison for joining us today.
Thanks for having me. No, as an educator, I found it tremendously reassuring to be part of such a lovely place.
But yeah, one more thing. Yeah, Eliza wanted to add that. Eliza wanted to add that. We got many more sound effects. But yeah, if you guys have anything else to say, like even anything along the topics, but yeah, any last words just sounds odd. But yeah, anything else to say?
Dun, dun, dun. Yes, please do, or else we will cancel
Subscribe
you.
to our channel, please.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I say that to all the teachers, and I didn't say this in the other episodes, but Inka's sick of me of saying this, but my dad was the first subscriber. I'm really proud of that. So, shout out to my dad.
Many people.
Shout out to my dad. And not shout out, but thank you for everyone for all the support that you've given us throughout the whole like podcast
We
journey.
love our subscribers.
Yeah. But yeah, I think we should wrap this up because, like I said, we've covered a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's kind of like a sensitive topic to talk about, but
Very sensitive.
yeah.
It can be, yeah. But I think at the end we kind of strayed away from body image a little bit and talked.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I definitely think that we covered some really important topics and some stuff that might actually be really helpful. So anyone that's watching or rather listening to our podcast, I think if you're someone that struggles with this, or if you're someone that feels insecure over how they look or their body image, or even like tiny things like your hair color or your eye color, or if you do or don't have dimples or freckles or whatever it is, if you feel insecure about anything with how you look, I think that, I mean, it's kind of silly. I feel like that could sound disrespectful, especially how it's something that also I sometimes feel insecure about, or I'm sure anyone here might sometimes feel insecure. But I think that it's just something that it's not worth worrying about, because however you look, it's great, you're perfect, there's nothing that you need to change. You're natural, and yeah, it's just great however you look and the way you are.
Do you have anything to say? Like, literally anything. Like, shout outs, maybe, to anyone listening.
No, I think I've rambled enough.
We talk too much on this episode, but yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for listening.
Yeah, thank you again to Mr. Morrison. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of Lab Listens. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Bye!